Okay, first I want to thank you all for letting me have the time near PLC to share with you what I did for my Edol 647 signature assessment for our PLC. This is just a table of contents, just showing the different things that I had to have in the PowerPoint. I had to have a meeting agenda. I had to state my vision statement, and it's kind of like a mission statement, but it's more towards the future instead of like what we're really doing. PLC project part 1 has a focus problem, has research, and the strategy that I used for an intervention. PLC project part 2 has the first intervention, my data collection, my analysis, and the modifications that I made to the intervention. Then we'll talk about reflection and possible next steps that I'll use, and then I'll give you time for feedback. And that's just pretty much in my vision statement as a teacher leader is to provide empowerment and a culture of positivity to other teachers by sharing and providing professional development opportunities for teaching strategies that have proven to be successful in my room. My vision as a classroom educator is to provide quality instruction that involves the active engagement of all students in a collaborative atmosphere in order for students to start to develop a feeling of responsibility for their own learning. PLC project part 1 has the focus problem, the research findings, and an article that's related to the strategy, and the strategy that I chose, and the baseline and how I got that. My focus problem. At this point in the year, it's the end of the year, students are getting tired, they're getting bored. So my students in my classrooms have started to show a decrease in motivation and student engagement. And that's a problem that's led me to need to reteach a lot of my lessons, to review more frequently, as well as leading to an increase in misbehaviors. And like this picture shows, the student success has like 3 really big parts: academics, environment, and engagement. So if that's missing, then we're missing out on learning. My research findings, I did a lot of research on different ways to get students engaged more actively in the classroom and different types of strategies. This article that I found, Integrating Whole Brain Teaching Strategies to Create a More Engaged Learning Environment, that's the article that I've provided you all with today, in case you would like to look at that further. The article pretty much states that it talks really about whole brain teaching as a whole. It's what used to be called power teaching. It was invented by Chris Biffle and his associates. A lot of the stuff for whole brain teaching is free. You can get videos to kind of show you how to do each strategy, each part of it. And we actually use the classroom rules already, and that's something that we'd already implemented and been using. In this article, the section that talks about the Teach OK strategy, it says that it is a strategy that leads to students' active engagement by incorporating all 3 primary learning modes. So when students are doing the Teach OK strategy, they're learning visually, auditorily, and kinesthetically. It is effective and fun, and with this person and their study, it increased student engagement by 72%. The strategy of whole brain teaching, Teach OK, I think like 4 really good things that I really liked about it, and the reasons why I chose to do this strategy as an intervention. There's less teacher talk. We talk and kids get bored, and so with whole brain teaching, the information is taught in smaller chunks. It's called, like we call it, mini chunks, and we lose less students to boredom, because after a few little bits and pieces of information, then they get a chance to teach back and forth with each other. In teaching, we do mirror words and mirror gestures, and that's how information is taught and brought to them. And then once all the information is taught, the students mirror what you've said, and they mirror what you do, depending on if you've told them words or gestures. And then you give them time to teach each other, and the students really have fun, and it really engages all students. My action plan for the strategy was to engage my students more actively in daily lessons. So I've decided to incorporate whole brain teaching's Teach OK into at least one component of each daily math lesson. To get a baseline, to be able to see if the strategy worked and how well it worked, to see how engaged my students were during lessons, I used a checklist and a tally sheet to record the frequency of various behaviors that I observed during lessons. Behaviors such as being off task, talking with other students, fidgeting, looking around the room, not paying attention. All other behaviors kind of just went on under off task. So off-task behaviors in the beginning, before I implemented it, there were 14 off-task behaviors during one lesson, during one class period, so that's out of 90 minutes. And then there were 16 instances of talking, 17 instances of fidgeting, and 11 instances of just looking around the room and kind of being elsewhere and eyes not on me. PLC project part 2 talks about the implementation of my intervention of the strategy and how I used it, the data that I collected and how I analyzed it, and then modifications that I made based on the data. My implementation of the Teach OK strategy started last week. I implemented a trial run with my second and third period math students. We're currently in our fractions units. So last week we did numerator, denominator, equal parts, the fraction of a region, the fraction of a set, fractions on a number line. For instance, with numerator and denominator, when we talked about what is a fraction, I'd put one fist on top of the other and I'd say what is a fraction, and they would say it's parts of a whole, because parts is the numerator and whole is the denominator. And so then they would teach their partner that. Students were receptive to the strategy and they were excited about it. When I would tell them teach and then they tell me okay, they absolutely loved it. After 3 days though of implementation, I found that there were several students that weren't entirely teaching all of the information, because I started out letting them teach at the same time. So they were simultaneously teaching each other. They were both talking at the same time. And then as I got to walk around the room more and students became more familiar with the strategy, I noticed that some of those students that don't like to participate or don't like to talk as much in class were kind of just being really quiet, letting the other partner, be louder and have most of the, and let them do most of the participation. So that was a problem that I encountered during that time that I had to fix. But my data analysis, after a week, the number of occurrences of student behavior or disengagement decreased drastically. At the end of the week, last week, off-task behaviors during a 90-minute lesson had went from 14 to 3. Talking had went from 16 to 5. Fidgeting in their seats had went from 17 to 6. And then looking around the room had went from 11 to 4. So I was really, really pleased with the way that the data turned out and with the way that the implementation of that strategy seemed to work. Modifications that I made, like I had talked about, I had noticed several students that weren't actively participating as much as their partner. Instead of having students teach each other simultaneously, I incorporated the switch extension of the Teach OK strategy, and that's just where they take turns with each other. You tell them teach, and they'll say okay. And then they teach, they know that partner 1 teaches. After we did this several days, they know, and I don't even have to say partner 1 teach. They know who goes first. So partner 1 would teach, and after a minute, and I walk around the room, see that everybody's kind of participated, then I'll have them switch, and the other person teaches. I started also giving the class a point on the teacher versus class scoreboard when all students were participating. And that's just our smiley frowny scoreboard, where kids will get a point. If everybody in the classroom is participating, the class gets a point. And if everybody's not participating, then I get a point. And that seemed to really help their motivation, make sure that all of them were participating more too. So both of those things really helped to kind of fix the problems that I had in the beginning. My reflection after looking back on how I implemented it, the data that I collected, and how it seemed to be working, it seems to have created a more collaborative environment, and active student engagement has increased drastically. The students really seem to like it. When we get to a point where they know that they're going to get to teach, they get excited and they're ready, and they look at their partner and they're ready to go. Possible next steps for my classroom are to continue the use of these strategies, both of them, to continue to use the scoreboard to increase their motivation so that they'll be more motivated to use this strategy, to track student learning closely, and this was something that I really want to focus on. I really want to track student learning and growth progress really closely, to see how it's, how possibly the strategies that I've started using with Teach OK and Switch have maybe helped to increase their learning, the actual learning, and how that student engagement will help to do that. Now, I'd like to gain your feedback. There's index cards and ink pens on your table. If you want to say possibly how you might be able to use this strategy in your own classroom, how you may be able to implement it. If you're interested in receiving more information, maybe if you plan to use the strategy in your room, or if you don't think it'll work, or any other questions and comments.